All right, Josh Smith here at my studio, live from Flat 5. My guest today is one of my favorite people in the world, a really good friend, and without question, my favorite guitar player on the planet.
Woo.
Certainly, certainly the person who, in the last 10 years, has probably had more influence on my own playing than anyone I can think of, any other musician. He's a tremendous player, a tremendous person, a tremendous educator. He's played with legends like Ray Brown and Joe Henderson and Freddie Hubbard and Bobby Hutcherson. I mean, he's just the greatest, and it's an honor to have him here. He's broadcasting live from Grump's World Headquarters right now, up in Northern California. Please welcome Bruce Forman.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for the high praise. Wow, I'm humbled. I
Oh,
mean,
dude,
I'm not usually speechless, but now I kind of am.
Dude, I mean, without question, I can't think of anybody who's influenced my own playing in the last, certainly the last 5 years, but probably the last 10 years more than you, just from our hangs, from our talks, and just honestly from being such a fan of your playing and listening to you play. And then getting to know you, it's just been a real treat for me, you know. I'm not the kind of guy who like hangs around with a lot of people. I don't have many friends. I keep it close to the vest, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you and become friends, man.
Likewise, likewise.
So I've been asking everybody because I'm really curious about the path. And I know a little bit about your history, but for the people who don't, what's most interesting to me with everybody, especially generationally and everyone I'm talking to from different backgrounds, ethnically and wherever, regionally, how the guitar ended up in their hands. So, like my dad, not a musician, no one in my family really, my uncle, but he was out here 3,000 miles away. So, it was random that a guitar got placed in my hand by my dad. I think he just wanted a musician in the family. How did it happen for you?
Well, I my mother's an artist. My dad really didn't care much about it one way or the other. My mother's an artist. She started me on piano. I played classical piano for about 5, 6, 7 years, and got a guitar. We're talking like the mid late '60s,
Mm.
and everybody was playing Bob Dylan tunes, Mr. Bojangles, that kind of stuff, some blues, and just hanging around with everybody, and I learned the shapes and started playing it and kind of realized that there was a similarity to the piano, the piano keyboard, the way it worked. and
Mm.
um, and then I heard, that's basically it. And then I heard jazz music, heard Charlie Parker, which is funny thing is in both of our frames, there's a picture of Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
Um, and that just sort of led me down the road to, passionate about jazz and blues and swinging music.
So, how old were you when you started on piano, and then how old were you when you got that guitar? Where did the actual guitar come from?
Okay. Okay. So the piano, I think I started 6,
Mm.
maybe 5, probably 6. And then at about the age of 12, maybe 13, there was a friend of our family that had a guitar, and he came over, and we were all just hanging out, and he just started showed me how to play a few chords, and then I got one. Or maybe he even left that one with me because it was his beater guitar and he didn't really like it. And so I ended
Right.
up, I can't really remember how that first guitar became owned. And then I moved up the ladder and bought better equipment, and heard more stuff and hung with different friends. It's not like I completely gave up on popular music at the time. You got to realize, that was like 1968, 1969.
Yeah.
What was happening musically then. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like I wasn't aware of Jimi Hendrix and the Who and, and Led Zeppelin and all that great music. And and also the folk gear side,
Mm.
like I say, the Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell thing. I was really in Cosby, Stills, and I was just into the in Woodstock. I was all there for
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Um, but just when I heard jazz, it just that's what like, and it's kind of almost funny to me that I didn't go back to the piano, being that most of the music I heard had piano and not guitar.
Mm.
And it was an instrument that I probably had a lot more chops on at the time.
Wow. Okay.
But I still the guitar was it, for me.
And when you first heard jazz, were your parents jazz listeners? Did they like it, or where'd you hear it first?
I actually heard it through a friend whose father was a jazz musician.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
that was the first, like, I remember Charlie Parker. I mean, I'd heard it through my life. My mom did like jazz and she had some records of it.
Mm,
And, and there was like a lot of music in our world that was very jazz oriented, like cartoons, particularly. Betty Boop was like a lot of Cab Calloway. And I was
yeah.
always really into those old Cab Calloway movies when I was a kid
Wow.
and, uh, and stuff like that. So, and old movies. So I was, I mean, I had that sort of predilection for it. And then when it finally realized what it was and heard it really for the first time, that was just sort of a pivotal moment.
And
And
were you already in California then, or were you
yeah,
still on the?
no,
Yes, you were.
we moved from Texas to California then.
Okay. All right. And so you've got some background then. You've been playing piano. You learned how to read, and and theory and things like that. At least whatever you learned from age 6 till
Yeah.
13 when they put the guitar in your hand. That you felt like that gave you a leg up because you were able to
Oh,
start transferring things.
definitely. I mean, I to this day there are things I can hear and conceive, and I really trace it all the way back to that early days of just playing and manipulating a piano, the range it has, and the flexibility you have to play various sounds against other sounds. I'm
Hmm.
sure that, and I played classical piano when I was playing piano, so it was mostly pieces. I didn't
Yeah.
do any improvising except for when I would just like get in trouble and have to make shit up, because
Right.
you're in the middle of a piece and the music falls down or you
We've
turn
all
the
been
page,
there.
you turn two pages and you got to do something, or basically you're playing for your parents or your relatives and they start
Oh yeah.
talking to you and you just sort of just make shit up as you're you know
I remember those moments like at my recitals, as
yeah,
7 years old, reading from a book, and oh, nobody will notice that this bar was not on that page.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm assuming you progressed fast because you got obsessed quickly. You were hooked and you loved it. I'm curious, that generation, like you said, there was a giant boom of people buying guitars and playing guitars because of what was going on. Did you have a lot of friends who played, people your age that you got together with?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of friends who played guitar. Not many wanted to play the way wanted to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, at high school, there were a lot of good guitar players there, and they all, and I was the guy always wanting them to show me stuff and hanging out with them, playing whatever they wanted to play. I
Mm,
actually even did a few jams at the Jefferson Airplane House that was not far from my high school. Um, Not that they were there; they might have been in the house. I don't recall any of them actually making the jam sessions,
right.
although they must have been involved tangentially because we were in the house. But
Right. Right.
that was that time, where things were a little looser. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So, I mean, I was just kind of, yeah, sleeping around musically. I'd play with anybody, doing anything. I had the thing I was into, and then I would just try and fit in with everything. I kind of guess I had a jazz mentality from the get go, just like
Yeah.
I never really bought into you gotta sound. I never wanted to copy anybody particularly. I had people I really loved and emulated a lot of their stuff, but I mean, the one person I could say I wanted to copy was an alto saxophone player named Charlie Parker. So
Yeah.
there was not really much chance of doing that on the guitar, which is a good thing. It made me kind of find something that was a reasonable facsimile, thereof.
And during that formative period, like in high school, did you have music in school, or were you involved in it in school?
Yes. I had music in school when I was young. I used to play piano at various assemblies and talent days and stuff. And then another school I was at, I was in the band and I played saxophone because they didn't have piano or guitar.
Mm,
So I learned to play a saxophone so I could play in the band. And then when my high school, that was really the pivotal moment in San Francisco because it was a school that had kind of failed. They'd had a bunch of riots and it was kind of they were phasing it out. But the music program was amazing. We had two really great music teachers, and all the good music students from the other schools would come to our school to kind of do their music stuff.
Okay.
and we had like gospel organ players and also just jazz players. We had hall guards back then, because there was problems at the school, and all the hall guards were professional musicians that were working at night. So they would come over and we would just have jam sessions like all day in the music room, you know.
See, that's amazing to me because I feel like I came in at the tail end of that even being possible. So I went to a music high school, basically a performing arts school, and I had music classes every day. But like that's not something my son could have now unless he went to some special school, you know. And it's just such a weird thing. Everybody I've talked to from my age and before all played clarinet or something in school. Some of them had like weekly guitar lessons at school where a private instructor would come to their high school and teach them classical guitar if you signed up, you know, and things like that. Like that just doesn't exist anymore. It's such a freaking shame.
It is. It's really changed. I mean, it's really true. It's just not. It's not. Yeah. I mean, and the bigger part of it to me is the community built around it. I mean, you can always like somebody who's interested in music with YouTube. There's lots of educational tools available now. You can always. I mean, now you can take lessons with you and me.
Yeah.
Um, but that whole community of people learning together in a pod and challenging each other and competing with each other and sharing with each other and
Yeah.
just feeding off each other's excitement and dedication, that's a sad thing that's missing, I think, right now.
Oh yeah, like you said, you had a lot of friends who played guitar, and maybe they didn't want to play jazz, but they were probably equally obsessed with guitar, but wanted to be Hendrix or something. And you
Right,
had something in common that you could relate to them with, and obsess over and talk and have fun with. And it was like, yeah, now that's just not a thing. You know,
right.
the musician is insulated at school normally. He's a loner, not a loner, but he doesn't have people that are on his same wavelength most of the time. He or she. So
Right.
that's weird.
It's
Yeah.
really true. And and the social, I mean, and of course here we are in this new world where we're all locked in our house, and the
Yeah.
state is, I'm pretty sure it's a state, I don't know if it's my county, but like they've outlawed, you can't have music now.
Yeah.
You cannot have live music now. Tell me, I mean, first of all, jazz is the original social distance music. Nobody comes anyways. So, but I mean, you could have a waiter walk up to your table and and hand you shit. You can go to the UPS store and literally be a foot from a person. Yeah, you're wearing
Mhm.
masks, but you're a foot from them,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But meanwhile, a band off in the corner of a room somewhere playing for you,
Yeah.
that's a problem. I
I
mean, it's
guess
like they're stopping us from working. It's really, if I were like Bezos or something and had a shitload of money, I would sue, because that's a civil rights violation. You're telling us we can't work simply because we make music. That's bullshit. There's rules about social distancing, and there's rules about all
yeah.
that stuff, which I really agree with and I am totally in favor of. Don't get me wrong. But within those rules, if a musician can play music and work and earn a living, what's the problem here?
Yeah, I think they're under the misguided impression that all of a sudden if you put a gaggle of musicians together, you're going to get a horde of fans.
Right.
and,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and well, they forgot about like the regular everyday musicians. You know, they think everybody is U2. And so once they allow U2, there's going to be 50,000 people in a stadium, you know. And it's
Exactly. But I mean, right now, even if it was somebody like James Taylor in his neighborhood,
yeah.
people aren't going to go and and like risk their lives to be in a crowd. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of like, you're just saying, well, you're a profession, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, there can't be more than this many people, they have to be this far apart. That's really what we're talking about. And that whether a human's making music or the radio in the corner's making music, I don't see a difference.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't see much of a
I don't
difference.
know. Like I say, or the musicians union should be fighting this fight.
Well, they're
You
too
know,
busy coming after us for our dues, you know, when
I
we
know,
don't make any money.
but I mean, but that would be a fight worth having. You
You
know,
would think so. That's why we have them, you know.
yeah.
But okay, so when do paying gigs become a thing? Like what's the first paying gigs?
Oh, I was lucky. I started, that kind of happened to me. It wasn't like I started a business. I
Right.
think my first one was New Year's Eve, 1973. Uh, like everybody in town in San Francisco was probably working.
Mm.
So I got a call. Like I must have taken a lesson with one guy who was a professional guy. He knew me. He knew I could play. We used to hang out and play together. And he said, just call Bruce, And so I ended up working this New Year's gig, and then the guy liked me, and he started hiring me, and then the other guys on that gig, and the guys I was doing jam sessions with started hiring me, and next thing I know, I'm going to school with. I once pulled out $100 bill at school to pay for something in the room, the food room, the cafeteria,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I got in trouble because I had $100 bill. Like they thought I was dealing drugs.
But dude, that feeling when you finally start like playing gigs with people older than you and they're putting money in your pocket, there's no turning back. It's like this is the greatest feeling ever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was just sort of like, yeah, this is cool. This is a great way. I mean, it didn't really even dawn on me that this was something I mean, of course, being a rock star dawned on me as a profession,
Sure.
but uh, being just a professional, and then I be like I say, I was hanging out with these jam sessions and stuff and playing with people, and then I realized these people are all professional musicians, and it's a great, along with the music itself, the people were so amazing, and the hang was so amazing. It's like, and wow, I can just work on getting better and make a living and hang with these people. That sounds like a life that's worth living to me.
Absolutely. So when you finish high school, what are your parents telling you? Like what are they pushing you towards? Cuz I'm sure
Well,
you already know what you want.
yeah, yeah, and it was San Francisco. You got to understand, San Francisco was such a great place for jazz at that moment. Even though people don't know about it because of all the other stuff that was happening in San Francisco at the same time.
Mhm.
I mean, like, let's face it, the Summer of Love and all that. The rock and
Yeah.
roll explosion and the funk thing with Tower of Power, and I mean, it was all happening right there.
Yeah.
Um, but there was also a great jazz scene going on. Bobby Hutcherson lived in town. Joe Henderson lived in town. Woody Shaw had kind of moved to town.
Yeah.
George Cables was in town. So it was like, I mean, my jam sessions, I mean, and I could name a bunch of other people that no one might have heard of. The jam, that hanging and the playing and listening to my heroes and then playing with them, this was my school already coming out of high school.
Yep.
And then of course, I'm a good Jewish boy, and my father, particularly, college, I have to go to college. And so he knew I was really into music. So he says, well, why don't you go to a college for music? And then I kind of researched it. And there were two schools basically then that had real jazz music type programs for that guitars could be in. One was Berkeley, and the other was North Texas State. This is long before all these jazz programs in every school.
Of course. Yeah.
And North Texas State really was attractive to my father because he had stayed in Texas when my parents got divorced. So he was a resident, therefore I could get like really cheap college.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was very, very much invested in me going to that school simply because I could be a resident state kid. For that way, he'd get out of having to pay for much college,
Mhm.
and he could park me there and hopefully indoctrinate me into a real business that I would make a living at. And so I went and auditioned and talked to all the kids, at the audition, and the audition went well, and it was, but I'm just there with all these kids who were like me, and I've been hanging out
Right.
with like Woody Shaw and I mean, and every night I'm listening to Ross on Roland Kirk or Art Blakey or Elvin Jones. I mean, that's what's happening in San Francisco. Every night I'm listening to
Mhm.
this, and because we had a club where those guys would play 6 nights a week, and they just come through, Max Roach and Bill Evans, and it's like
Yeah.
it's George Benson, and so the kids were all talking about, yeah, when they get their degree, they want to go on the road with Woody Herman. That was like the thing that the kids that was the
Interesting.
carrot at the end of the stick for them. And at this particular time, um, we're moving into this. This is like 74 or 5. And things are changing now for the big bands. They're not really
Yeah.
traveling in buses and stuff anymore. Like they're kind of getting, there's not as many gigs for them and stuff like that. And it was challenging. And actually, the funny thing was I had already worked with Woody Herman because Woody had come to San Francisco to play a one-off gig, like a big, private party, incredibly well funded. And so he brought out his piano player and his lead alto player and his tenor saxophone soloist and his lead trumpet player. And then they just hired San Francisco guys
Mm.
for the rest. And because they had a couple of rock charts, right? Um, they wanted to get a guitar player in the band. And my dear friend, a mentor of mine, an older guy who I played with and recorded with for years, still talk to, he had played with Woody, so he was the guy who got called to play drums on the gig.
Mm.
And and he said, "Well, get Bruce. He'll play." And I got there, and it was hilarious. Here I am, super excited to play in the Woody Herman band, and and like basically my job there is to kind of rock out on a couple like shuffle blues. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because that was the kind of the way they played rock. It was just sort of like pre Chuck Berry shuffle.
Yeah.
And 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 it was really. But meanwhile, I'm looking at these kids, and they all want to like play with Woody Herman, and I had already done it, but I wanted to play with like Bobby Hutcherson and Art Blakey, even though
Yeah.
Art didn't have a guitar player. I was hoping one day
Yeah.
I'd be the guy that would make that band.
You'd be the first guitar player in the Messengers. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's so I decided. Long story here. Sorry, I decided not to go to college. I told my dad and mom that I'm not going to college. I'm going back to San Francisco. I'm going to get my shit together, and then I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to spend a couple more years getting my shit together, and then I'm going to go to New York. And me, Josh, I really study this stuff. Till this
Yes.
day, I mean, I'm just figuring shit out. You know what I mean? I learn at a
Yeah.
different speed than a lot of other people because I'm so dedicated and I study so hard. So like,
Hmm.
I didn't really like the idea of being in a group of people and having to study like 4 years, something I might be able to learn in 2, you know?
Right. Right.
Um,
Plus, man, you wanted that on the job that you were already doing it, and it's
yeah,
like once you get that taste of that, the not that there's anything wrong with the school environment, but it doesn't fit you anymore once you've been learning from like real people on the
yeah.
job. It just doesn't fit.
That's true. And it's kind of like, I guess, a wild animal in the zoo. Once they get the taste of human flesh, you can't ever trust them again.
Right.
So, and so my father was very, 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 very upset. As a matter of fact, he disowned me.
Oh man.
And it was a temporary thing. And my mom was totally supportive of it. She's the artist. She understands. She really trusted me to be able to take care of myself through the world. She didn't really worry about me. She kind of, I guess, saw in me a person that can take care of himself and figure things out and do what needs to be done. And if I had to go back to school a couple years later, I would. You know what I mean? And my dad eventually, I came through. This is so Jewish here. Um, I came through Texas, right? And I was playing at a jazz festival in Galveston with Freddie Hubbard, or was that with Richie Cole and Eddie Jefferson? I'm not sure.
Oh.
And my father's best friend was like a jazz DJ on a radio. He was a jazz fan, And he called my dad and he says, "Hey, Bobby," he says, "doesn't Bruce play the guitar?" "Yeah, doesn't he play jazz?" "Yeah." He says, "Well, I think he's playing at the festival down in this jazz festival down in Galveston with Freddie Hubbard or whoever I was playing with." And my dad, so he showed him by then it was like in a magazine or something. There was no internet. There was like
Yeah.
like a newspaper ad or something. he shows him this ad, and my dad calls me after like not talking to me for what, 7 years now.
Jeez.
He calls me and he says, "So you come to Texas and you don't call me?"
Yeah, that's very, very,
Yeah, yeah. It's a Jewish joke. It's
it's
great, you
very
know.
self-mutilating Jewish humor. Larry David,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, so when I was finishing high school, I had like you, I'd been gigging so long already that college wasn't even a thought. But it was my Jewish grandparents who were, the ones that gave me the grief about it, and I had to like put the due diligence in to make them think I might go to college
uh,
before I let them down easy.
and really, like I want to say, I teach at a college now. If I were coming up today, I would go to college. If I really felt the way I did about the music, a person like me who was really got to play, particularly jazz, um, I would have gone to college if it were today, because right
Yeah.
now the opportunities that I was afforded when I was coming up are just not there anymore.
Yeah,
So
you'll actually play more at school than you were. You were probably playing 5, 6 nights a week, and
right,
that's
and with
no way.
certain
Yeah,
guys, that the only way you're going to get access to them now is in college, because they're not working that much either.
yeah, yeah,
And I mean, we had days, we had guys were playing 3 sets a night, 4 sets a night, and they were like, shit, I mean, if you were there and wanted to play and wanted to sit in at towards the end of the night, they're just looking for great energy, somebody else
yeah,
to kind of
mm,
step it up and bring some heat, so
yeah,
there was a lot of like openness. They're like by the end of the third set, there's hardly anybody in the room anyways.
yeah,
So the band's like, "Oh, you're in town, you live here, let's hear you." I mean, guys were really welcoming, and um, yeah, it was they could tell, like, okay, this kid's been here every night. And then the club owner says, yeah, he's a good guitar player. I was kind of like almost their pet kid in the club. I got to come in and hang out. And yeah, yeah, he plays good. Yeah, da, 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 da. Okay, next thing you know, I'm up there and I'm getting gigs. you
right,
know.
yeah,
So, but now the school is more the place for that. So I mean, I just want to say that it's all about the environment and the timing of things. Things change. Like right now, I mean, no one's even at school. We're all stuck in our room, and
yeah,
how are we going to make that work for ourselves? It's like, I mean, I liken it to like we get a tune and it's got a new set of changes we've never seen before.
yeah,
We got to figure out how to play them,
yeah.
and that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, and it's weird. Yeah, I'm sure you're teaching students like we are right now via Zoom or something like that, or at least having conversations with them. But it's almost like a lot of people pay for a gym or a trainer because they need the motivation of being around other people or someone to kick them in the ass. Same reason you go to college, kind of,
Yeah,
is to have get kicked in the ass and have peers around you and all that. And now it's back to, well, the onus is always on you, but it's really on you again right now.
yeah, yeah. I remember I was working with Terrence Blanchard at this one music thing for the Monterey Jazz Festival, and there were some kids in there, and they were asking questions and talking about practicing. And he says, well, I was studying with this great trumpet teacher in New Orleans, and Wynton Marsalis was studying with him. They were both kind of working it out. They were
Yeah.
similar age. And he says, I asked, because the kid had asked about practicing, and he says, I asked my teacher, I said, do I need to practice every day? And the teacher said to me, he says, no. He says, but Wynton does.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're right, the motivation thing. And also, I mean, from teaching, and I do a lot of times, the roadblocks, people, I mean, people call us because they want to get better and they think we can help them on their path.
Sure.
That's basically it. Um, and a lot of times, what really is going to help them is not necessarily the guitar, but the way we think about it, or to be motivated to do positive things or to take responsibility. There's a lot of stuff you'd probably put more in the psychotherapist or shrink world
Yeah.
than guitar teacher world, where you just got to get inside a guy's head and figure out what's or girl's head and figure out what's holding them back, what's stopping them from doing the work, what's stopping them from understanding why they're unhappy with what's happening and how to make it right. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of my strengths as a teacher is kind of not feeling like I have to give you 10 pounds of licks with every lesson.
Right. No.
Well, I'm going to do what's right and helps you achieve your goals and figure
Yeah.
out what's getting in the way of that.
You are fantastic at that. So, when do you start writing tunes and thinking about your own music?
Huh. Well, I think that's different with everybody. There's a lot of guys who never even do that. But for me, a lot of times the inspiration would come to me. Like I just like maybe I'd play a little chord progression that I never heard before, and it just like, or maybe a melody would fall out that I just really loved, and I just sort of build it together. Maybe I was inspired by something that happened in my life, and there were a few ideas that were just sort of rattling around my brain, and they finally coalesced around that concept. Uh,
Hmm.
there was a period where I forced myself. There's You've seen orchestral sketch paper, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like a double. It's like 18 staves, and it's like double sized.
Yeah.
Uh, I for a long period made a deal with myself that I would fill up a page a day. I mean, there was no. I mean, it could be I could reharmonize songs, I could write new songs, I could do tone rows, whatever it was. But I would sit down and write a full page every day, even if I had to write a laundry list or a shopping list. And in that time, I wrote a lot of great tunes. So there is a thing if you sit down to write and you really kind of get yourself into the momentum and into the flow of it. You're definitely going to be a lot more productive than just waiting around for inspiration to hit. Although it still will hit. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there's a
That's
song
something I struggle with.
I think I played. I just played something like that, which sounds kind of like sermonette or the preacher, a little bit Horace Silver, and I built a whole song around that just because that one thing just sort of fell out, and I followed the idea through. So
Yeah.
um, and I come from the bebop school, so like writing contrafacts, they're called, new melodies over standards.
Right.
Uh, a lot of times I did that just as a teaching tool to show a student what I would play for a chorus over this song. And
Yeah.
then it was such a cool chorus. I said, well, man, I'll make the bass player or a horn player play it along with me and we'll have a song,
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of the actual melody of the standard, that kind of thing.
So it really is like a balance between discipline and inspiration for you writing.
Most definitely. I have friends who have a whole different way of doing it. And, of course they have reasons for the deadlines and stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah, for me it's I'm just playing, and if inspiration hits, I'm ready to go at any moment.
But you have moments of disciplined writing too, which is
Sure,
cool.
sure, I have had, and of course a lot of that seems to be more channeled into arranging these days because that's what I get
Okay.
called to do more.
Yeah.
Somebody will have a song, and if they just need help with, obviously my harmonic sense is a little different than a lot of people, so it'll
Hmm.
make the song kind of sound different.
Right. Right. All right. So then you're touring. Your solo records start to come out, and you toured with some legends of music and all that. When does teaching as a profession start to really even become something you're interested in?
Well, I was always giving lessons. I mean,
Right.
way back to like almost high school days, like I'd work in music stores teaching lessons. And it was really kind of twofold. One, it's three actually. One, I really like talking about the music and helping people. I really do. Second of all, um, is a selfish thing. If you want to really learn something, you got to teach it. I mean, by teaching it, you learn new facets of it and new ways to think about it that really help your own playing. And third of all, I mean, I like the money,
Right,
So,
yeah.
and I feel like I'm an empathetic creature who can hear where a person needs to go and can help them. And so I was good at that, and I just and then it's funny as the equilibrium in jazz changed. Like when I started, probably 85% of the money in economy of jazz was performing, and about 15% was education. Well,
Yeah.
now you can easily say that that has completely flipped.
Yeah.
And I just guess like my timing was good. I was there teaching all along. I started a mentoring program for kids. I have real I mean, being a person who learned how to play, I feel like there are ways to really help people learn. And I think by playing with better players, that's the most important thing. And so I've always been really about, getting everybody playing with people who are better than them. That to me is like the generational mentoring apprenticeship aspect of music that is
Yeah.
so important. So I have just that has been my philosophy in teaching, and it's been successful. And so now, as the economy changed around me, I was just lucky that I was in a good spot. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean now it's been a thing that's it doesn't carry you, but it's a huge part of your life, and I think you find it rewarding.
Oh,
Absolutely.
of course, man. And it's again, it's on all those three levels. One, I really love helping people. I feel it's my responsibility. I was mentored by a lot of great players,
Yeah.
so I have that responsibility to pass it on. It's rewarding to do it. It's a challenge to do it, so I like all that. But then also, it provides benefits for my playing because these guys keep me on my toes, and
Yeah.
I need to really get clear about what my thoughts are about things and
Mhm.
put to words sometimes things I can only hear. And just by kind of clarifying what that thought is, that sound is in actual words, you have a better understanding of it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that that's still to this day. And I really think, being older, there's, your physical skills do diminish as you get older. And being around all these young bucks, it forces you to stay in shape,
Yeah. Yeah,
which
no,
is great,
absolutely.
which is a gift.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, even though I teach nowhere near as much as you do, and I lament it up until the time that I actually do it. I complain that I'm going to do it, but
Yeah,
once I get into it, I do enjoy it. And you're right. The part I enjoy the most is helping somebody break down a wall, number one, and feeling like you actually helped. But then number two, what it brings to my playing. Like it just brings clarity to
yeah.
thoughts, and then that opens new doors for yourself. Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's jump into the 10 questions.
This sounds like it's 2.5 Passovers, right?
Yes, yeah, your math is accurate.
Yeah.
Number number one. Where's the afikoman? Do you have the? Sorry.
Really,
Number one.
man.
When you started learning and playing, what was the first thing that when you figured it out on guitar and you got it under your hands, you were so proud that it was like it set that hook. There's no going back. You couldn't believe you figured this out. It's so cool.
Wow, man. I remember playing once just over some blues, right? And
Hmm.
using pretty much pentatonic, of my version of the pentatonic scale, what I call the Bruce scale. Um, and I remember it just like it was swinging. I finally felt like I was playing with the guys. I mean, I was
Hmm.
playing with good guys, and even they were going, yeah. Like I remember
Yeah.
hearing two guys in the behind the rhythm section going, yeah. And I was just laying into like some swinging shit, and I thought, oh man, I found this like magic highway or something. This
Yeah.
beam of light that if I just hold on to it, it'll energize me for the rest of my life.
Yeah. That's that feeling is the greatest. How old do you think you were when that
I
happened?
was probably about 14.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an amazing feeling. And you're right. When you're a kid like that and you play with people better than you
Yeah,
and you get even just the littlest bit of validation, it's
yeah.
like, "Oh man, I've arrived. I can't, I did it." Yeah. That's
But
a
I mean,
great
it's like a
feeling.
spark. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to use a wildfire, metaphor, or
Yeah.
analogy, but yeah, I mean, it just lights something inside of you that it just like it's just out of control. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
something you have to feel that more and more and want it all the time, and
Yeah,
that's what it
yeah, you
is.
you become addicted to that feeling. The first time I transitioned from, all the practice to like being on a stage with adults and I finished a solo and like they all kind of gave me the thumbs up, but then people also clapped. Now part of it was because I was this tall, but
Right.
still it was like that's it. I'll never do anything else for the rest of my life. Like that was it. Yeah. No,
Cool.
amazing. What's the first solo you ever learned note for note? Did you even do that?
I don't do. I mean, I know a bunch of them because I can sing them. Therefore, I
Yeah,
can.
you got them in here, but
But I didn't. I was never really transcribed full things. I was more like transcribed pieces. But I did
uh,
Charlie Parker's "Now's the Time."
yeah, yeah,
That one. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that one just tore my head off. I mean, that not only was some. I mean, that sucker pulled me into jazz.
yeah. So is that so in your opinion that's the one that really pulled you in that song?
Yeah, that solo. Yeah.
That's yeah. I so when I was a kid, two of the guys I played with in my first band, they were in their 40s, and the guy played keyboards and guitar and sang, and he was kind of a jazzer, and the bass player he was a rocker, but their parents were jazzers. They
Uh,
both played bass and guitar, just like their sons, and they played like with Ira Sullivan and stuff in South Florida, who just passed away actually, South Florida jazz legend.
oh
Uh,
man, Ira, I got to play with him a
yeah,
number of times. Man, what an amazing talent! What a great and under. I mean, all us musicians know about him, but I don't think a lot of the jazz fans really do. You know,
so yes, you need to look him up. I used to
yeah,
see him play with Joe Diorio at the airport, which is
yeah,
incredible. But anyways, so these guys they tell me you should come with us one of these nights to go see our parents play. They're in their 70s or
yeah.
something. So I went with them, and they're playing just trio, guitar, drums, and I don't remember who the drummer was, but the guitarist and the bassist were their parents. And the first song they played was "Now's the Time." And
Wow.
it was immediately hit me like that's a blues. I could play that song with them, and it made a big. I was probably 13 years old, and it was like, oh, I that was cool. So I asked, "What's that song?" And they told me, and my dad had it on a record because he had Charlie Parker records and stuff. So I found it, and then I listened to it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
Wow. That solo. There's that first chorus alone just has
It's
everything you need to know about Bird.
yep, yeah, it's unbelievable. What's the first thing you play every time you pick up a guitar? Do your hands just go somewhere, like without
So
thinking, like autopilot?
lately, it's been sort of an E majory kind of thing.
Okay.
I think,
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's because this guitar is so acoustic. I've gotten more away from the real electric arch tops to the more acoustic ones.
Yeah.
That it's just listen to that.
Yeah.
It's like it's beautiful. Stuff like that.
Yeah. That was mostly my thing too for 25 years until I started to play the same thing so often that other musicians would parrot it back to me. They'd hear me flip standby on my amp and know it was coming out, and they'd play.
Oh, oh
They
no, God, yeah, that gets embarrassing. Yeah.
yeah. So I had to change it up. Now I'm in G most of the time when I pick up a
Well,
guitar. The
I
first
mean, yeah, and I don't really play anything specific. It's just usually find myself in the key of E
Yeah.
Just kind of that's to wake up the guitar and to kind of wake me up a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So that may relate to this question, and it
Okay.
may be the same for you as it is for me, but do you have some sort of running musical narrative that is just in there all the time? So for me, I'm hearing that Charlie Parker solo, even if it's stuff I can't play, I hear it literally 24 hours a day. When I'm cooking eggs, I'm hearing like
Yeah,
it never goes away. Is it the same for you?
yes, most
Okay.
definitely. There's a soundtrack to everything all the time.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, yeah, back to my original, we said this earlier, they have a word for people that are like hearing voices all the time.
yeah. I tell my wife I get in bed and put my head down on the pillow, and it's like I have to wrap that solo up before I can fall asleep. It has to resolve.
Uh, sometimes I'll just like even put on, a radio and an earbud, just, with people talking or something, just to kind of try to, I can never get rid of it, but I can like quiet it enough so that I can sleep.
Crazy, crazy. All right, number 5. When did you feel like during the midst of your growth period and gigging and all that you started to find what maybe was your voice on the instrument? Was there a moment when like something clicked and you felt I should go further this way? This kind of sounds like me.
There, yes, there. When was that moment? There were numerous. I think that's, I mean, maybe that's even hurt him on, but I've had directions. I go in directions. I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm going down a highway, but it's not a straight road. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's, little bends and turns that go through new areas. And so I've had numerous ones of those. I really, and it's so funny, there's this thing about being yourself, I mean, uh, it's particularly when you're young in your 20s, and in your teens. And you're saying, I got to be me. I got to be me. There's this whole thing. But meanwhile, you're mostly just copying the people you like,
Right.
you know. And the beautiful thing for me is I really kind of was modeling myself mostly after people who didn't play the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and most of my professional functions were not as a guitar player. In other words, yes, of course, Wes and George Benson and Barney
Mm-hmm.
Kessel and Joe Pass, like, are my, and Kenny Burrell are my like guiding lights for the instrument. But,
Yeah.
but, not as much as Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Wynton Kelly, Art
Mm-hmm.
Tatum. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so, and most of my gigging it was funny enough. I'd either be kind of in a band to be a secondary horn player, or I'd be in a band because there was no piano player, so I had to be the piano player. So in a lot of ways, that stylistic development came just out of professional experience and the
Yeah. Sheer
need to
necessity.
provide, yeah, and to be something. But but back to my thing, like in our 20s, we think I gotta be me, I gotta be me, but you're really spending most of your time copying what you dig. And then you arrive in your late 30s or 40s and you look around and you go, oh shit, I'm me. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like you just are yourself. I mean, this, and you almost realize that all this worrying about being yourself was just kind of a waste of time. It was gonna happen anyways, and you're a combination of your background, your perspective, your 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 aesthetic, what you like, your resources, and your skill set. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how it's like your hand. That's what you
Yeah.
become, and
Yeah.
you really can't avoid it. You can try your best to be a clone of John Scofield or of John Coltrane or something like that, but
Yeah.
you're not going to be. You're still
Right.
going to be you.
That's amazing. One thing you said there about jazz, even the guitar players you listed, like the your heroes, our heroes, Wes and George and Barney Kessel, even Charlie Christian, and these guys, even the shit they were listening to were not guitar player based. The first, even Charlie Christian, the first improvisers he was listening to were horn players. So it's like I think that's completely unique to jazz, like you said, that most of your heroes, even though you had these guitar players, it's all based off some other instrument a lot of the times. Whereas the world I kind of started from, the blues world, every hero I had was a guitar player, and then he basically invented that language, his sound, and so it was that is a different kind of thing that jazz is unique, I think, in that way.
right.
for guitar players at least.
You know, and as you know, it probably with a lot of influences on the same instrument, it is more challenging. Well, it's more difficult to hear your personality emerge. It still does, but
Yeah.
it's not super obvious like it would be in a jazz context, I think.
Absolutely. I think that was maybe why, like you said, I did become obsessed with like, oh, I got to find my voice because I knew for certain I sounded too much like this guy for a while and too much like this guy and then too way too much like this guy for years, you know, and
Uh,
it was very obvious to me. So it pushed me the opposite way, you know.
cool.
Yeah. All right. Number 6. What do you consider your biggest weakness on the guitar? Do you even think about anything like that? Do you have one?
Yes, that's a question I ask myself almost daily, and that's what I work on. You know, obviously, for me, it would be like my ability to play rock and roll with pedals and effects, you know? No, because I really don't know how any of that shit works. I can get into the, you know, you could give me your rig and I could play and I would come up with something that would work and it would be like
Yeah,
unlike anything you'd ever heard before. But I
sure.
really wouldn't know. You know, that's not something I have the ability to do because I just don't want to buy a bunch of gear and spend the time doing that. But that's like a real weakness. Weakness is within my playing in the context of what it um, is like, I feel like just, you know, developing more counterpoint, you know, more, you know, even though I do a lot of it, it's like, it's not as strong as I want it to be.
Interesting.
Um, I like swinging so much that I think I have a weakness for not playing lush things.
Huh.
You know,
Interesting.
I mean, like really lush chord voices and just letting them sit there. And that's something I work on a lot because I do see it as like when I listen back to my playing, I go, wow, there's just like a bunch of shit going on all the time. There's never really this like lush pastoral landscape
Hmm.
harmonically, you know, everything's always moving.
So let me ask you this then, because this is a tangent, but it interests me. When you talk about like, you know, not playing with pedals or a guitar, or, you know, solid body guitars, rock things, at what point is a weakness not really a weakness and just a personal choice? Like when is contentment acceptable? It's like, well, I know if I wanted to play like Yngwie Malmsteen, I would have learned to do it by now. So I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? It's I guess you could consider that a weakness, but it's also I'm content in my choice. Where do you
Right,
fall
right.
on that?
That happened to me a long time ago. I mean, back, you know, probably maybe before you were born even. I was tickled by the fusion world
Sure.
and the funky guitar-y world of Robin Ford and Larry Carlton. You know what I mean? I was pretty much a bebopper then, but I got myself a 335, and that was the hot music. And I sure loved the way Robin sounded, you know. And I mean, I knew all those guys because they were Northern California guys too. So
Sure.
Russ Ferranti and I played gigs together a lot. You know, this was back when he was with Robin's band. You know, before the Yellow Jackets were formed,
Right.
and I thought, wow, this is the future. This is a direction, new direction in the music. I'm going to go down this road, you know. And I got got myself a 335, you know, was playing with a lot of guys in LA. Was going to move to LA. At the same time, I was working with Richie Cole and Eddie Jefferson on the road, so I was playing. My bebop Jones was being satiated, you know. So I was
Yeah.
kind of checking out a new direction, and I, you know, I was playing fusion with a lot of good bands in LA, and we were on the road, and I came home early because and the band and Eddie and Richie went up to Detroit after Chicago. I came back to LA, I think, to do a gig, and Eddie got murdered out in front of a club, and that had a big effect on me because I looked around and I realized I really didn't love the music I was playing. I loved when I was playing bebop with Richie and Eddie, and when I played with Bobby and Freddie and all that stuff. But that playing loud fusion with the song, the changes kind of just sat by themselves. They didn't really kind of They weren't
Mm.
progressions in the sense of cadences that I kind of my ear liked.
Uh-huh.
Um, the loud long solos, it just like all felt kind of aimless to me and unrewarding. And I realized the reason I was doing this was because it was popular and maybe going to make me more money potentially. Although I also was very well aware that probably the people who loved it more than me were going to do better, just because of that's generally the way things work in life.
Yeah.
And I really loved playing straight ahead, and so I put that 335 away and never really played it again, and sold it and moved on. And with the L5 and rode that to here. So you're right. I mean, I can see that stylistically I have certain styles I'm good at and certain ones I'm just completely unaware of. They are weaknesses, I think. Just because to be more well-rounded would probably give me more things to say. But you're right. I mean, I have to go with. There's only so much time in the day, and I have to be honest ultimately.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Very much so. All right. Number 7. Who's a huge influence on your guitar playing that people would be surprised to hear?
Huh. Surprised to hear. I don't know if they'd be that surprised, but Albert King.
See, I'm not surprised, but
Yeah,
I don't know how much you listen to him though. That's interesting to me.
I've listened to him quite a bit. But the things that get me about him are not really like the things that most people get out of him. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But you'd be surprised how much it's influenced me and how much just the way he, first of all, he can make anything work. He's one of those guys that his guitar can be so phenomenally out of tune
Yep.
that like he doesn't even I mean you could just like fuck around and play with all the tuning gears and that motherfucker could get up and make it work.
Yep. Yep.
And there's a commitment to an integrity to his music that's so deep, and his just pure way to get himself through this wood and through this metal out to the world, that is so inspiring and such a big influence.
Well, I'm with you on this one. There's a reason Albert King is the maybe the only person I've ever listened to almost every day of my entire life. Even if it's just one song,
Yeah.
there comes a point every day when I listen because yeah, don't get me wrong, there's a million people that have influenced me and that I love, but nothing makes me just take a breath, gives me goosebumps and just auditorially even just go, oh, whoa, like listening to Albert King. Nothing has ever done it. Nothing.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, he's among many. You asked for the one that most people would probably never figure.
Interesting.
In a way, I mean, I put him in the same places like John Coltrane and Charlie Parker in that way, in that these people transcend the instrument and the music, and there's a part of them that comes through and just grabs you when you hear it.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. All right, number 8. Would you rather have a great guitar and a shitty amp? This is in a gig situation, or
Uh,
vice versa, a great amp and a shitty guitar.
Great guitar, probably.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm opposite of you. I need the amp. I'll have a
Uh,
better show with whatever guitar and a good tone versus the other way around.
well, I mean, I guess to me, with a shitty guitar, you're not the amp's not even going to have a chance. I mean, I guess what we're talking about is something a little different.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, the amp is far less important usually in my gigs because of the volume level I play at.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? And there's workarounds. If a guitar is unplayable or won't stay in tune, or that the particularly like the input jack is always crapping out.
Yeah.
That to me, it's like, I mean, and that's happened a lot.
Yeah.
Particularly hollow body guitars. There's a thing about input jacks. They really, because of where they're mounted, and the curve of the guitar, it's a sort, it's a design weakness.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. All right, so you'd go for the guitar.
I
It's
would,
been split.
I mean, I play mostly acoustic style
Yeah,
music, so
yeah.
the amp is not. I mean, I've got a lot of great amps, and believe me, there are some guitars that can sound good almost with any amp, and there are some guitars that you can only have a good amp and they'll work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been split about 50-50 on the
Yeah,
answers.
yeah,
All right, so we've already established that you work your ass off and you're more dedicated than most. You're always pushing towards new things. What keeps that going for you after this many years playing? Do you just love it that much, or is there something else? Do you feel like obligated to do it? I do to some degree. Like this guitar has given me everything in my life, and I feel like I'm letting it down if I don't give back and play it every day. But I'm wondering what keeps you pushing.
well, again, that's that there's various stages of life, that and not, I hope this doesn't sound condescending, but when you're at certain levels, at certain ages, certain things, you ask certain questions of yourself.
Mm,
When you get to my age, and I mean, like if I didn't love it and really have to do it, I could just walk away from it. There's no reason why I do it every day as hard as I do. My wife's out camping right now. I could be out camping,
right.
but I would rather be here working on my music, still teaching my students, like finding the next sound. I just have to do it, and I love doing it more. That's the weirdest thing about this, is that I've been doing this now for what, 50 years, right? And
Mm.
and I love it more now than I ever did. Really,
It's
playing
not
music.
weird to me. That I understand it.
And the real irony, I guess, and it's kind of a sad irony, is that I can't be out there doing it for people, because while I don't need people, I mean, I can just make music and feel completely fulfilled. There is a missing connection there,
Oh,
that
huge
that
one.
that at least, thankful for the internet, where I get to have some of that.
Yeah, it's been that's the conversation I've had with my non-musician friends during this pandemic when they ask me, "Well, what's different?" and they go, "Well, we see you, you're playing every day and you're working. We saw you went to Nashville, you were producing this, you're doing, you're working." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but the thing that I identify as the most, which I know is the same for you as an improviser, has been stripped away. And it doesn't mean we're not sitting. You're improvising all day long, sitting here on, in your room, and when you do your show and when you do everything, but it's in a vacuum. You're used to having feedback from every other musician, feedback from the audience, and that changes what you play, and it's a living, breathing thing, and that's just been taken away.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they
yeah,
can't, no non-musicians can't relate to that, so they don't understand. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, number 10 then. Do you have a 5-year plan, Bruce? Is there something that's just grating on you that you have to get it done?
Well, you don't know, but I really feel, I really feel that I've come up with something new, or at least defined who I am, because I've been a person that's had a lot of things going on my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, there's of course the jazz guitar player. I have a trio. I'm duo. And I have my red guitar show. I have my band Cowbop. Um, teach all that. There's just like this whole big bunch of shit that I do, and I
Yeah.
wanted it all to be one thing. I didn't want six things, six projects to push up a hill anymore. Like that was kind of like, I guess, my goal for the 5-year plan. Was to like find draw a circle around everything I do to have one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my decision a while back was the red guitar.
Yeah.
It it had, elements of my cowboy band and my cowboy sensibility. It had my trios arrangements in it. It had storytelling. I write novels and I like telling stories. It had teaching in it, and
Mm.
you know what I mean. And I was playing and improvising, and entertaining people, which is
And your
something I like
and
to
your
do.
sense of humor.
Right. It had all of those things, and so that is really kind of what I wanted, which that begat Grumps, the character Grumps,
Yeah.
which just happened because of a rant on Facebook. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
know.
didn't, I just got up one day and I was just sick of watching everybody practice on Facebook. And
Yeah.
I got up like a geezer and I said, damn, man, it's like, when I was coming up, people played in public and practiced in private.
Yeah.
I said, so everybody remember that when you go on Facebook, and it started kind of a shitstorm, and I kind of got known as Grumps from that. And then I started making these comedy videos, and then of course the TV show happened out of that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, if I had to explain it to people who didn't even know who I was, it's like, imagine a really a guitar player, a decent jazz guitar player, who was kind of like Mark Twain or Will Rogers, like a social commentarian, smarter than he seems, kind of down, folksy and self-deprecating, Western style, you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. And, I mean, and so I realized that this Grumps character that I mean, it's sort of like the culmination of the 5-year plan, except for now what to do with it
Right.
is, I really feel like I've got it. And, like Grumps, the basic thing about Grumps is we're in a world right now full of assholes who, no, really, who think they're nice
I
people.
wish that didn't make me laugh, but it's so, yeah.
No,
I
we're
wish it
in,
wasn't
we're in a
true.
world of assholes that think they're nice people or think they're justified in being assholes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Grumps is actually a nice person that thinks he's an asshole.
Mm.
So having that character to kind of riff on and do all my shit. And with that, I kind of, like I say, I go down this kind of, you know, um, this kind of Mark Twainsian, Will Rogers kind of, thing. But I'm also, I can play the guitar, what I mean? I mean, really and in a way that most people almost don't even know you can play it that way. I
Mhm.
mean, the world's kind of clueless about this style of playing, and even what a guitar like this. What is this even a guitar? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
And um, and so it's giving me an opportunity to kind of introduce something like, well, God, this guy can play, but why does he? Why doesn't he play like a regular guitar player? And and also I have the freaky ability to be able to talk at any level while I'm playing anything. So like to me, this is like the end of the 5-year plan. I've got this. Finally, I've got my circle. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Now the 5-year plan is to what to do with it. I'd love ultimately. I think my Grumps TV show. I'd like it on Netflix, and I'd
Mhm.
like to be able to get past the pandemic so I could have real guests on the show
Yeah.
and get some real writers with me to help me and kind of, but still keep the folksy home, the lame kind of like Fernwood Tonight vibe of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I think it's a good plan, man. I think
Yeah,
it's a good plan.
it's what I want to do. I want to entertain people. I mean, I'm going to keep playing and practicing. There's no stopping that,
Yeah.
But the fact is, like you say, you saw that video I put up from Grunts TV where I'm just playing, and then my
Mhm.
wife comes in and she's shaking a martini. And next thing you know, she's shaking it in time with me, and I'm playing
Mhm.
along with the, cocktail shaker. I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of shit. That's okay with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
It's entertaining stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we reached the end of the 10 questions. So,
Uh,
everybody, there will be links to all things Bruce Forman in the description of this video. You need to go buy his records. You need to buy his classes. You need to take a lesson because you'll learn a lot. But mostly, listen to his music, man. Bruce, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And for members, if you're not a member yet, hit join. And if you are, you're going to get our little extra video, the Turn 2 video, which we'll do in a second. But Bruce, what
can
a
I say
pleasure, man.
Can I say something real quick? Yeah. First of all, thank you, Josh. I just want to point out what a great member of the community you are. You're a great friend. I got to say that I have a lot of. Basically, I was stuck at about 1,200, 1,500 Instagram fans, and when you did your blues challenge and then let everybody know you knew me, that has incrementally changed my community to more people, and I'm ever grateful for that. Your graciousness and generosity, just like your generosity of spirit, to do a show like this and to enable all of us to meet your community and to build a bigger community together. So I want to really just let you know how appreciative and respectful I am of that.
Well, thank you, Bruce. That means the world to me coming from you. And I mean every word I say. Like, everybody needs to hear you play music because, it's something special that doesn't even need to, you just need to hear Bruce play music. So go do your due diligence and buy some music and support a real artist.
Thank
But
you. And I
members,
look
yeah,
forward to meeting all these people somewhere down
yeah.
the road, either through the lesson or, like I say, all those Grumps TV episodes are on my YouTube channel, so people
Well,
can
I'll share
subscribe and
that.
find it when I put stuff up, whatever.
I will share it all in the
Oh,
description.
thank you.
So,
Thank you.
all right, members, we'll be right back.